The Democratic Alliance Federal Congress is continuing in Midrand. John Steenhuisen is going head-to-head with former Johannesburg Mayor Mpho for the leadership post. Let's go there now live, where we find eNCA anchor Marcel Gordon. Marcel, just a short while ago, you told us that the Congress is packed up for today. They will begin tomorrow, but today an important day as constitutional amendments were discussed by delegates, as well as the two that are contesting for the top position for the leader of the party, John Steenhuisen and Mpho.
Indeed, it was a big day, and they really packed a lot into the few hours that they were in action here today. Heidi, thank you so much for that. But yes, they've packed up. They're actually busy rehearsing for tomorrow, which is going to be just as busy because, of course, the voting will take place tomorrow, and we'll find out who will lead the party as the country heads to all-important polls. But more importantly, with me right now, I've got our colleague Lukhona Mnguni with me, of course, the host of On the Spot on eNCA. Every Sunday, you don't want to miss it. It really is appointment viewing. Lukhona, thank you so much for joining us. So nice to chat to you for a change. We always have these chats. We always have these chats off air as we swap over shows on a Sunday. But such interesting things to talk about here today. I mean, on the floor of this Congress, you very much get the feeling, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John Steenhuisen is expected to hold on to his position as leader of the Democratic Alliance. But they're trying to put their best foot forward, not just about the leadership positions that are up for election, but also about who's their different bands of leadership that will be coming up the ranks as it looks to grow, because growth is something we've heard a lot about here today. We've also heard, there's one saying I've heard repeatedly here since this morning, we're within striking distance of ruling the country. So very much a party that's looking to the future, but knowing they still have a lot of hurdles. What are you reading in this room about the leadership battles here and what you're expecting to see pan out tomorrow?
Well, Marcel, good afternoon, and thank you for chatting to me. As you are saying, there is that general mood and sense that John Steenhuisen, will come back, and I think personally quite comfortably as the leader of the Democratic Alliance. And I think it's because of the work that was done or not done outside of this room in the preparation for the conference. I don't think that Dr. Mpho did manage to put up a spirited battle for this. But also, as you would know, eventually political parties become ecosystems that have power brokers. And if you are unable to crack some of the power brokers to be on your side and to, give you their endorsements and their support, it becomes very difficult for you to come through the ranks. When there was a moment in the day, I think the biggest leadership battle was between Mmusi Maimane and Wilmot James back then, because
aging us now, Lukhona.
Well,
I remember that
institutional memory. but it was an important battle because there were some power brokers that were moving out of the scene. Helen Zille was seen as stepping back, giving time, to a new leadership to emerge and so on. What I think is interesting about this conference, while the DA is looking forward to the future, it is still significantly stuck in the past. It's like going back in time, where Helen Zille is still very much predominant, and the leaders that are emerging, some of them are not so new, some of them have been in some of the positions that are elected, and it seems as if, there isn't a radical transformation of the leadership with getting some people who are quite visibly active, like your Christopher Papas and so on. You are not seeing that newness, so I think the DA...
They're kind of keeping them just there.
Absolutely, keep them at bay, enjoy, enjoy showing them off, but don't give them the reins of the party.
Are they stuck, or do you think from a political point of view that it's a stranglehold that old guard has on the party, and is it holding them back?
Well, a stranglehold of the past on any organization is a sense of stuckness. At worst, it's a sense of it's a space of paralysis where you cannot move beyond and meet the moment where it demands you. There are significant things about the DA that people may think are meaningless. The fact that in your metro municipalities where the DA leads, it is being led by white men, whether Nelson Mandela Bay, Tshwane, city of Cape Town, and so on. You're not a party that at face value is even meeting this so-called the most diverse party in South Africa they usually laud. So their articulations and their practices are actually walking two different paths. And I think that's where, for me, the sense of starkness really is at.
We've heard repeatedly, like I said, that they really want to be seen as a party that could rule South Africa. But I've seen things like, for instance, two of the amendments, Amendment 2 and Amendment 3, speaks very much to who within the party can qualify to run as a candidate for Member of Parliament or head of provincial legislatures. There's a big focus on that. And it seems that it is a conversation within the party as they struggle to show off their diversity, to get a meaningful, skilled membership is what we keep hearing. They want candidates that are skilled and that are experienced. Personality, however, is a big thing when you're trying to appeal to a broader part of the South African population. Do you think that they've burnt their fingers too many times in trying to parachute in big personalities and big names, and they now have sort of gone back to the tried and tested and said, no, we're rather just going to focus on bringing people up from the ranks? Jordan Hill-Lewis was a member at youth level. Solly Malatsi was a member at youth level. Do you think that perhaps should be a better approach for them, or are they missing a trick?
The change should always be encouraged to be an organic evolution from within any entity. The problem is that there were people who fought too hard against that change. If you remember the conference where the diversity clause was a big talking point to be added as the fourth value in terms of the values that define the Democratic Alliance, that debate nearly collapsed that Congress. And certain people had to make interventions to rescue Congress, and then diversity was but clearly reluctantly adopted as a value for the DA. So there is a sense, I think, that needs to happen in the letting go, one, ideologically in terms of what the DA should stand for. Secondly, in terms of, again, how do you meet the moment? Yes, the parachuting of certain people through structures. I mean, if you look at the ascendancy of Mmusi Maimane himself in the DA, it felt like he was a ready-made project to ensure that he goes up the ranks as much as possible and as quick as possible. And then what happens when, you know, the system is done with you? It disposes of you. And I think that has alienated a lot of people who may have thought of the DA as a vehicle for alternative governance in the country, but the aesthetics of it, the look and feel of it, and its operating model does not attract people. When you see talent dropping off over time, your Lindiwe Mazibukos, your Mbali Ntulis, your Makashule Ganas, and so on.
Absolutely.
And I know Helen Zille will disagree sometimes with this and say, well, we still have a majority of our public representatives, being black and all of that. But the truth is that you are losing some of your creme de la creme. You cannot just sit by and not introspect and say, what is wrong with us? Why have we allowed this to happen?
Absolutely. It does also seem that they then want to move away from that sort of more personality-driven and let's say leading talent, a focus on the leading talent that they've lost, and focus more on the work that they've done in the metros as well as the smaller municipalities. Because, I mean, maybe I should ask you about that first. In the lead up, or since the last local government elections, it became very clear that they wanted to show that them winning those metros at the time wasn't just a fluke, and that they were going to use the work that they do in those metros as a platform for national elections. Look what we've done in these metros. But they haven't played the political games well enough in those metros, where coalitions have just been blowing up. Every week you don't know who's the speaker in Tshwane, who's the mayor in this city. Where have they come unstuck in how they have maneuvered their way around these volatile coalitions that have taken over in our important metros?
I think first is the philosophy at which they approach, these coalitions. They are probably still using the model that, Helen Zille used in the city of Cape Town after the 2006 local government elections, where you hold this coalition together of multiple actors, and then eventually you manage to swallow some of them and use it to upstage your opponents so that in the next election you've got a majority, right? Unfortunately, that's not the trajectory of South African politics anymore. The more there are new entrants, the more the likelihood of persistent coalitions exists. Therefore, the DA has to step back and rethink its approach. It has really been accused by some of its coalition partners, of being arrogant, of not wanting to negotiate, of wanting to stamp its authority as if those coalition governments are DA governments rather than governments enabled by multi-party coalitions. That's a very
You're right,
first,
that is the template
that's a
that
very
they've been
first
using. You're
and
so
a
right.
very, very important thing that they've got to rethink, because what is going to happen is that more and more they are going to alienate some of their coalition partners, and when those coalition partners switch and bring back whether the ANC or its proxies into power, they are going to blame those coalition partners as selling out our democracy. Meanwhile, they don't necessarily introspect about their own behavior and how it influences people to move away from a DA-led coalition. So I think that's the first that they really need to think about. Where they govern, like in the city of Cape Town, if you look at the 2021 election results, the DA actually eroded about 10% support in the city of Cape Town. We don't talk enough about it. I mean, Gareth van Onselen, just interestingly, a former DA employee, did a Twitter thread where he was tracing the amount of votes lost by the DA election to election and indicating that, you know, over 1 million votes lost in the 2021 local government elections if you compare to the 2016 local government elections. So the DA is a party in decline in many ways, because partly it has not played the political game well, but it has underserviced certain communities even where it governs well, which is a serious problem, which is why now the Western Cape has the highest number of hung municipalities, which indicates to you that the DA actually is a party in decline.
So where do they turn things around? The word that stuck to me repeatedly is authenticity. You've got a party, like you just mentioned earlier, that's they've got everything looks very slick, you know. Social media plan is sorted out. They've got the audio visuals. They've got the statistics to show. In the Mid-Vaal we're doing this. In Mayor Papas is doing that. Jordan Hill-Lewis, look, he's gone off. He's cleaning up the streets in Mitchell's Plain. And yet, there is still a lack of them being able to get their hooks into an engaged and trusted relationship with the majority of South Africans. And that's what they're going to need to do if they really do want to be seen as a party that can rule South Africa. How are they going to get that right?
Well, there are three things that the DA can do, but they won't do, unfortunately. The first is really to break up with the past. Let Helen Zille go. And she is a polarizing figure. She's not a unifying figure anymore. That Helen Zille, who took over from Tony Leon, who was quite concerned about different constituencies, going even to events in black households and pretending to be cooking in big black pots. That Helen Zille has just simply disappeared. Now you've got a Helen Zille who wants to consolidate a purist outlook of the DA as a liberal party that is undiluted, and therefore you don't have to go to lengths attracting a support base that may fight against this liberal notion and you know, center-right kind of behavior that they now exhibit. So break up with the past. She was given an opportunity when she ascended to actually lead the party unencumbered, and the likes of Tony Leon were made ambassadors. Douglas Gibson made an ambassador. But here you are now with a Helen Zille returning to want to run the party and even at times undermine the leadership of John Steenhuisen. So that's the first, and unfortunately it's not going to happen. The second is that the DA really has to package a moral vision for South Africa that is very rooted in redress and, you know, undoing the past injustices and so on. Again, you've seen multiple pushbacks from the reluctance in terms of, adopting redress laws. The fights that, as way back when Lindwe Mazibuko was parliamentary leader, and they fought about, you know, questions around affirmative action and what equal opportunities really mean in real terms, and when you put legislation and they say you don't have to use race as a proxy for this and that. So as long as they can't solve that moral vision for society, they've got a problem. Thirdly, they must allow a new energy in the party of leaders. We've just mentioned some of them. Jordan Hill-Lewis, your Christopher Papas, your Sivuyo Gwarubes, not just to be chief whips, but really to be given some room to take over the party and take it to the next level. I mean, you still have people like Ivan Meyer being considered. They've been occupying positions for some time. And if they can't do these three things, to energize, one, the party, secondly, to try and capture the imagination of society differently, and thirdly, focus on winning votes of the majority of the electorate. You can never want to govern a country when you do not have a way to service the majority constituency, and in racial terms that is still black communities, in class terms that is still poor communities, and of course even in some of where they talk about the colored vote, that constituency, if you look at a by-election recently in the Western Cape, Patriotic Alliance is making some inroads. Of course, we know that Good broke the back of the DA in certain constituencies. So
and
there's a lot that's going on.
And it's all happened in our lifetime. It's all happened in our lifetime, and it's not the last we've seen of it. Very quickly, on the spot, coming live from here tomorrow at 12 p.m. Tell us quickly what the viewers can expect from your show tomorrow.
Well, we will do some analysis, unpacking some of these issues that I had played, the amendments, the continuous fight over whether there should be a deputy leader in the DA or not. It seems as if the voting margin this time around was quite narrower than previously. It means that might be something that in future is won. We'll also talk, of course, to the service delivery poster guy of the DA, Christopher Papas.
Okay, Lukhona Mnguni, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
As always an education, because we're old, we remember all of these things from 20 years ago. On the spot, coming to you live from here at Gallagher Estate tomorrow. You don't want to miss it tomorrow at 12 o'clock. That's it from me and the team here at Gallagher Estate for the 2023 Federal Congress of the Democratic Alliance. They'll be back at it nice and early tomorrow morning. Back to you, Heidi.